So what is Roosevelt Lives? If you don't know, then it's an alternate history scenario that's currently being developed on Reddit. This first episode of this YouTube series is going to explain the exact point of divergence in the timeline, mainly being the Night of the Cherry Blossoms.
The Night of the Cherry Blossoms was a major attack that took place on July 16th, 1945. Several Japanese planes dropped a highly weaponized strand of the bubonic plague developed by Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army onto several major cities of the western coast of the United States. The bioweapon would subsequently kill over 7.5 million people in the western United States, becoming eternally known as the Night of the Cherry Blossoms. But what events led up to this? How could such a devastating bioweapon be created, and how would the United States even react? Just as in our timeline, on May 12, 1945, President Franklin D. Roosevelt died. Of course, his vice president, Harry S. Truman, succeeded him as President of the United States. Truman, however, was severely mentally unstable and attempted to take full control of the United States government with the backing of a powerful cult called the Church of Roosevelt. This led to a massive internal conflict, as Truman desperately attempted to consolidate his power while also bringing a swift end to the war in Europe and in Asia. The rest of the world was shocked by this. Never before had such insanity occurred, let alone in the United States. The idea of a cult worshipping FDR appalled the rest of the Allies, and while the Nazis loved the idea of Truman's purification of the rest of the world, that didn't change the fact that they were still fighting an entire war against them. The war in Europe would end less than a month later with the surrender of the Nazis, which certainly helped Truman's case. The fact was, however, that the war with Japan was still raging, and the American boys abroad still had a war to fight, regardless of whether Great Britain or France objected to the new regime. In Japan, the army grew desperate. Their only allies had been crushed, their navy and air force couldn't compete with the Americans, and the only thing they had going for them was their ability to keep throwing men at enemy lines and never surrendering. However, the Japanese Army High Command knew that they were losing the war, and that they needed a Hail Mary to save them, or at least to hold off the Americans for a year or two to recuperate. Unit 731 was a covert research unit within the Japanese Imperial Army. They took Chinese civilians and war prisoners and used them for experiments during the Second World War, exposing their countless victims to diseases just for fun. This made them the perfect fit to create a bioweapon just for the Japanese Army. It was originally Unit 731's idea. They tested their new strand of the bubonic plague, barbarically killing thousands of test subjects in the name of science. General Yoshijiro Umezu was the one who approved the weapon to be deployed, and of course it worked. In fact, it worked far better than anyone who knew of the weapon in the Japanese army expected. Truman and the new American government based around the Church of Roosevelt quickly moved to contain the plague and created the Plague Buffer Zone, more commonly referred to as the Corridor of Death, to stop the spread of the plague to the East Coast. Truman then declared that America itself needed to be purified and that the Japanese needed to be punished. The wrath of the Americans unto the Japanese was now incurred, with the Manhattan Project becoming the sole focus of this new holy order of the New Deal.